Silicon Valley Bank. Now, this is the major news right now, as many of us woke up this morning and found out that there's this bank that went insolvent, and now a major banking crisis is right around the corner in this situation, and we better get ready because reasons. Now, a lot of this exaggeration and hyperbole is coming from message board type commentators, if you know what I mean. Now, what's really happened is that this bank called the Silicon Valley Bank, basically, it served mostly technology workers, venture capital backed companies, including some of the industry's, best known brands. Here's the thing. It's the 15th largest bank in the United States. And essentially, yes, it failed. Now, what they tried to do was they tried to recently raise about $2 billion in capital to use that in order to function and to pay out people withdrawing their funds. And they failed to do so. And that in itself set off a lot of alarm bells in people's heads, and then they did a run on the bank and left us in the situation that we're in now. Now, I want to state for the record, this is not an apocalyptic scenario. This is not 2008 all over again. This is absolutely nothing like that, although there seem to be plenty of confused internet people who seem to think it is. Now, when it fails, Silicon Valley Bank, which is based in Santa Clara, California, had about $209 billion in total assets, according to the FDIC, be the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Meaning that's the people who come in and take care of the problem, and the people that, who insure your deposits. That's one of the things. The FDIC was one of the things that was introduced in the Banking Act on June 16, 1933. I think it was FDR that signed it into law. I can't remember, but whoever the president was on June 16, 1933, when the Banking Act was passed, put that in there. It was to protect bank sector receiverships. Now, specifically, they are referring to receiverships. The FDIC manages receiverships to maximize net return and terminates them in an orderly and timely manner. Under the FDIC Act, the FDIC, in its receivership capacity, manages the assets of failed IDI receiverships to preserve their value and to dispose of them as quickly as possible, consistent with the objective of maximizing the net return on those assets. The oversight and prompt termination of receivership preserves value for the uninsured depositors and other receivership claimants by reducing overhead and other holding costs. By quickly returning the assets of a failed institution to the private sector, the FDIC maximizes net recoveries and minimizes disruption to the local community. What this means is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation comes in a situation like this where there is a massive failure in order to protect the deposits that people have put in. They come in, they seize the bank, they seize the bank's assets, and they begin liquidating them. Those liquidations go towards not just covering, protected deposits, but covering those who have had deposits over the limit of which can be insured. The current limit is about $250,000, and any deposits you have greater than that, they're not insured. The assets that were held by the bank that are being liquidated now are being used to cover those deposits so that the people who put the money in the bank don't lose it. But previous regulatory reports showed that a lot of accounts in that bank exceeded that $250,000 limit. Now, it's not public knowledge how many of those deposits was over $250,000, but according to some documents, it's substantially over, meaning it's a lot. It's, Silicon Valley, that's where all the tech startup companies and whatnot. And so this is what's created this whole big, huge fear. Oh, the tech industry is about to collapse. Well, no. You see, the tech industry didn't collapse. This bank very poorly managed themselves and put themselves in this situation. This is a flaw in the individual bank, not the actual Silicon Valley industry in general. Now, there's virtually no chance that this is going to spread into the broader banking sector. This is not like the Great Recession or like the months leading up to the Great Recession, because it's only one bank. It's not all of them. This is extremely unlikely because the current large banks in the country right now have relatively, healthy balance sheets and lots of capital. That's not the problem. The difference is that with the 2008 collapse, it was securitized mortgages that were turned into financial instruments, mortgages that were not paid. And those were out generally in the entire financial sector. This is one bank that's having a solvency issue. So this is not the same thing as 2008. This is not some huge apocalyptic scenario. This is being way blown out of proportion by people on the internet. Now, since the FDIC is seizing the bank, California bank regulators and the FDIC transferred the bank's assets to a newly created institution, meaning a new temporary bank that's going to take care of all the screw-ups that bank had. It will be called the Deposit Insurance Bank of Santa Clara. That's just the name they're going to use because that's where the bank is. Now, the new bank, they've started paying out the deposits on, paying out the deposits on Monday, and then the FDIC and California regulators plan to sell off the rest of the assets to make the rest of the depositors whole. So that way, as little money is going to be lost as possible, because that would be the greatest way to ensure that this doesn't spread into the rest of the banking economy, by making sure the people who put the money in there get the money back. And if there's no money missing, then there's no problem. If you get all your money back, then there's really no problem. Okay. So what did they do? What is it that the SVB Bank do that actually screwed everything up? Well, they took on a bunch of mortgages. Once again, with the mortgages. And they took them at the top of the market, when the real estate market was insanely hot. And, well, it's not hot anymore. And a lot of those mortgages could not be paid because a lot of these smaller tech startups can't afford to pay, couldn't afford to pay those mortgages. And then all those mortgages that they took on piled up. And then they couldn't afford them anymore. And then we ran into the situation that we're in now. Now, this is like I said, this is not like 2008. This is not a mass amount of mortgages that were turned into financial instruments that were put out into the economy in general. This is a single bank not having money, not the companies they necessarily represent. That's the difference here. Many of those startups are still well and good. It's just many of the mortgages that this bank took on in relation to the property markets when they were really, really hot, which has now cooled, and are now left with a lot of money that they used to buy up properties, which they can now not make back because the real estate market is not like it used to be. It's not the same hot. So it's a massive hit. Tech companies didn't fail. This bank failed because it made bad decisions. And it's just the one bank, not a generalized financial instrument in the rest of the financial economy. So there was no apocalyptic situation here. It's just one bank made a bunch of bad decisions, and now they're screwed. So hopefully that clarifies the situation and tries it dispels maybe some of the anxiety that people have over this situation, thinking that it's going to blow up into this bigger, 2008 kind of generalized disaster, which it most certainly is not.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.